up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 500. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line, one cool guy. It's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis.
Welcome. Yes, this is, of course...
two cruising guys.
Yeah, that's just definitely the two cool dudes podcast intro. But this is our 500th episode, and we're actually going to be doing M20 First Impressions and the World of Spark Sunset show with the addition of the soundboard, of course. So
yeah, that's right. So sunset shows, Luis gets that was our agreement, right? You get them on the sunset shows, and then we take it right back away from you so that you don't go completely ballistic. But as Luis said, two different topics today. We did the set reviews because we got the cards early, and we were just like, look, it's just more important to get the set reviews in the hands of people as early as possible so that they can have a chance to listen to it or watch it before the pre-release. And but that stepped on when we would normally do the sunset show. But I've got plenty of people saying, hey, I still want the sunset show, and we still want to do the sunset show, so we're doing it now. But we also want to give you our M20 first impression. So let's get into all that. Before we do, though, got to mention our sponsor, channelfireball.com, where you can buy M20 right now. You can go on. They actually have kind of a cool assortment, too. You can just get a booster box straight up, or a bundle, as they're called now. Either one, those are kind of the standard issue products. But CFB has assembled some cool extra stuff that you can do. You can get them together. That's called a combo. Or you can get a booster crate, which comes with a whole bunch of extra booster packs and life counters, sleeves, deck boxes, dice, that kind of stuff for just a little bit more to get kind of a little extra bonus in there. You can even get a booster case if you're balling hard. That's the 6 boxes of M20 if there's something that you really want in there. If you do get any of these things over at Channel Fireball, use the code LSV and you'll get 5% off. So that's a great little bit of value, and it's a great way to help support the show here as well, is by going to CFB to buy your goods. So head on over there for M20 right now. I also want to thank everybody on the Patreon. That's patreon.com/limited resources. You know how this works. If you love something that is made, particularly online, Patreon is a place that you can go to support the people who make it, to make sure that keeps happening and that they're able to do it in a balance. Yeah, cheer for the Patreon. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Hey, you actually used it well. That was weird. All right, I like it.
Yeah, I was actually supposed to use it when I said our 500th episode, but then I forgot. So
okay, well, now we got it. Anyway, thanks to everybody who's on the Patreon that supports the show. We really, really appreciate it. And I have to mention this as well before we get into the stuff. I mean, this is our 500th episode, so it seems appropriate just to take a minute and say thanks to 500 to say thanks to everybody who listens to the show over the course of the last 9+ years of making it. And of course, I want to recognize you, Luis, as the longest running co-host of the show. It still doesn't feel like that to me for some reason. I don't know if that will ever change. You still feel like the new guy, but whatever. You are far from it. I think you've now eclipsed the next longest running co-host by double. I think you've lapped them.
So, it honestly feels weird to me to have that be the case. I still feel like I'm new to this.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
No, I mean, look, I know how many episodes everyone's done. I know that, I am by far the longest running co-host, but it still feels like, LR, that's that thing that Marshall and Ryan did, that John Locks was on, that, him and B-Wong did forever. And it just, it turns out that I've been doing this for a long time. And
yeah,
it's felt good. I have been, really happy with it. And I anticipate, sticking around for another 500 episodes. I guess that spoils that I didn't have any special announcements in the
it does. But it's been great. And what I want to do is, I know some people were like, "Are you going to do anything big special for episode 500?" And the answer is no, we're not. And there's a couple of reasons. The first one is just that, I kind of suck at stuff like this, and I don't know. I like recognizing milestones to a point, but then I kind of also I want to get you a good show out the door and not make it be one of these things where we're sitting here talking about us the whole time. But also I recognize that it's okay to do that. And I've learned the error of my ways from that. But the 10th anniversary of the show is coming up in just a few months. And I figured that would be a better time to do it.
The special sign-off announcement.
Come on. I got to feel okay for like 12 seconds. But anyway, so we're going to do something for that. And that'll be, or, maybe episode 541, but probably the 10-year anniversary. Because that to me is like, geez, like that means that doing LR is the longest job I've ever had. Which is weird because I worked quite a long time in my previous, 2-ish jobs as well.
10
I
years
was there for 7 years. Yeah. So it's a big chunk of my life, both, currently, but also when you zoom out a bit too. And we'll do some looking back and some special stuff for that. But for now, suffice to say, I want to say primarily thank you to the listeners, each and every one of you that tunes in every week and that has helped build out this awesome community of draftaholics around us. Thank you. Seriously, it means a lot. And it is a joy to be able to do this show every week with you, Luis, and for everybody listening. And we really, really appreciate it. So let's get in. Again, we got to bring you value, right? That's the whole core tenet of the show. And even though it's a fun milestone episode, we've got a lot to talk about here. So first things first, we're going to be doing the War Set review, the War Set review. We're going to be doing the War Sunset show, but let's get our initial impressions on M20 in here because brand new set, finally got our hands on it, got to play it a little bit, and definitely have some thoughts. So let's do a crack-a-pack to kick things off. This one comes from Kevin Bartram. And Kevin, I met, actually, it's funny, I bumped into him at 2 pre-releases over the weekend at 2 different stores. So it was like, hey, it's you again. And he's a listener of the show and gave me this pack. So thank you for that, Kevin. It was really nice to meet you as well. Hope to see you around. Okay, let's get into it. First card out, Lavakin Brawler, 3 in a red, 2/4. Elemental Warrior. Whenever it attacks, it gets +1/+0 for each elemental you control. Card's been solid.
Oh, it's been more than solid. I believe this is one of the best commons.
Ooh, look at that. Right out of the gate, just with a zinger.
Look, it's not murder, it's not any of the, it's not Cloudkin Seer exactly, but I would take Lavakin Brawler over Pacifism, pick one, for example.
Woo! All right, we're in. I think we know where Luis stands on the format early. Next is Moment of Heroism, 1 and a white instant, target creature gets +2 in lifelink until end of turn. No.
I'm not a big fan of. I'm really not a big fan of white in this set, and definitely not of Moment of Heroism because it doesn't.
I'm not either.
Doesn't really do what you want, even in the best white deck, which is the Blue White Flyers deck.
Mm-hmm. Next is Bone to Ash, 2 blue for an instant at common. Counter target creature spell, draw a card. Early impressions for me is that this has kind of gone back to feeling a little too slow. Where are you at?
I think it's playable in the right deck, but a lot of decks aren't going to want it.
Yeah, and you want one or 0 is the correct number.
It's honestly just not that. It's not that good. It's just okay.
It's just okay. Reckless Airstrike, red for a sorcery. Choose 1. It does 3 damage to target creature with flying, or you destroy an artifact.
Very good sideboard card.
Yep.
I've liked playing with it, but yeah, I wouldn't take it early.
Epicure of Blood, 4 and a black for a 4/4 vampire. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses a life. Fine, it's just whatever. Yeah. Feral Invocation is next. Is 2 and a green for an enchantment aura. It's got flash. Any chance a creature, the creature gets +2/+2. We gave it a little bit of a bump because it's basically a combat trick that's a little overpriced, but where you get to keep the bonus. But this is a type of card that's super replaceable and just not that important really in any particular deck.
It's just fine. It's not anything spectacular. It is playable though.
Yeah, you can play it. Sorcerer of the Fang, 1 and a black, 1/3, 5 and a black. Tap it. Sorcerer of the Fang deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker.
I have found this to be an actual okay playable. Look, you're not excited about it. You don't want to take it early, but having 1 in your deck does give you a little bit of reach.
Yeah, I keep thinking that it's 7 mana to activate because I think the last one was 7, the one that drains for 2 or whatever, the 2/1. Yeah, but
that never got activated. Also, a 1/3 is a little better I think that a 2/1 for the kind of decks that want this activated ability.
Yeah, they just lines up better with making the game go long. Next guy I've liked quite a bit, Netcaster Spider. 2 and a green, 2/3 Spider with reach, and whenever it blocks a creature with flying, it gets +2/+0. I like it. It trades off for some bigger stuff and holds some of the small to middle stuff.
I wouldn't call it the Nets, but it's good.
Yeah, it's fine. You mean like the basketball team? Or
No.
Yeah, I get it.
I meant like
Befuddle,
the Nets, but
Befuddle. 2 and a blue, instant. Target creature gets -4/-0 until end of turn. You draw a card. This card's playable.
Yeah,
put this in your deck.
Surprisingly playable, but again, it's the kind of card you don't really ever have to take early, and often you don't have room for.
Yeah, goes particularly well with Death Touch creature, stuff like that. Pulse of Marasa is our first uncommon. This is 2 and a green, instant. Return target creature or land card from a graveyard to its owner's hand. You gain 6 life.
I do like this card. I'm still on Lavakin Brawler here. But and we'll talk more about elementals later and why I like the card so much. But I do think the card is very first pickable. And Pulse of Marasa is fine, but it's not something I'd put a huge priority on. Like I will basically always play it in any green deck that has enough creatures. But I don't know. I wouldn't take it over like a Leafkin Druid, for example.
Right. Next one is Corpse Knight. Black-white for a 2/2 zombie knight, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses a life. Also, bummer. Ours is only a 2/2.
Yeah.
Did you catch that?
Yeah. I certainly did. This is how I know you didn't read my set reviews because I made a joke about that there.
Yeah, no, I did not. But we had multiple of these opened at our pre-release. There was a 2/3. If you didn't see, there was a 2/3 Corpse Knight printed on accident. It was like they had to give a speech at the beginning of each pre-release, like if you open a Corpse Knight, it's a 2/2. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I know it says 2/3.
It's a fine card. It's one of the better cards in the pack. I would still take a monocolor card over it, but Corpse Knight is a good card.
Yeah, it's good. It's just not great, right? You never play it and think you're getting away with something. It's just like, okay, I'm doing stuff, I guess. Now, this card's really nice. In fact, I would take this one over the over the Brawler as well. This is Ember Hauler. Red for a 2/2 goblin. You can pay 1 and sack it to do 2 damage to any target.
Yeah, I would take Ember Hauler as well. It's close, though.
Yeah, it is close. No synergy, with much, but it's just rough.
Well, Ember Hauler has synergy with Soul Salvage because it kind of plays as a removal spell, and in the red-black deck, it makes
synergy with Soul Salvage in that it's a creature that you can get back with Soul Salvage. All right.
Well, no, because it's also a creature that can sack itself, so it's easier to send it to the graveyard. And
true,
you get it. Like when you're playing against blue-white flyers, Ember Hauler Soul Salvage is very good, whereas Soul Salvage plus Lavakin Brawler is just not particularly good.
That's true. Yeah, I guess I was meaning more, deck level synergy, but oh god,
this is what I'm hearing when you're when you're just like trying to make fun of my set combos.
Come on. All right, so we've got Bloodfell Caves for our dual land. That's the red-black gain land. Sure. And then we've got 2 rares. Our first pack in M20 from Kevin here has double rares. So the first one is the non-foil one. What the hell? I was just saying that we had 2 rares. I wasn't even criticizing you.
Go on.
First rare is Temple of Come on. I'm just reading the rare. How can that be nonsense? It's Temple of Triumph.
Okay.
I snuck that in. It's the Scryland
temples. Yeah.
Exactly.
I like temples. I would tend to take them above most average playables, but I would take Ember Hauler over the Temple of Triumph. What do you think, Marshall? What would you do here?
Oh my God. Come on, man. I know you're just setting me up for the stupid thing. I know what you're doing. Everybody knows what you're doing. We have another rare. We have a foil. And I would actually take it over all these cards.
All right.
It is Knight of the Ebon Legion.
Oh, yeah. It's 1 black for a 1/2. You can pay 2 and a black to give it +3/+3 and Death Touch this turn. And at the end of your turn, if a player lost 4 or more life, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Knight of the Ebon Legion is amazing.
It's so good. So good.
You can also pump it twice. Like if you have 6 mana, it just becomes huge. Often when you play this on turn 1 or 2, it's just correct to pump it on turn 3 because then it just becomes a 2/3 forever.
Yep.
And this card is really, really good. It's a 1-drop that's great on turn 1 and great on turn 10. So
it's so hard to design a card that fits that description, and they just nailed it here.
Yep.
It's so good. The interesting part to me is the death touch part. Do you have like what's up with that?
It really makes it so you can't double block it, because normally they attack with the 1/2. They have like 4 mana up, right? They could pump it to a 4/5. You're like, all right, fine. I'll put 2 3/3s or a 3/3 and a 2/2 on it.
Oh,
with death touch now, it really punishes that. That's part of why this card is so good.
Okay, I see. Yeah, because when I see that on, an ability like this big, +3/+3, I mean, you just don't see that very often. I just think, well, is that a little redundant just because my creature's already going to have 5 toughness? But that makes total sense, like getting through just a random double creature block. Anyway, yeah, I would take Knight of the Ebon Legion here. You too?
Yeah, by a lot.
By a lot. All right. So I'll put those. Oh, I should do that. Okay, I'll do that later. We have the giveaway. The cards from the last. These 2 new ones will start the new Crack-a-Pack rare pile. But in the meantime, I have a whole bunch. Remember, we got a donation from our friend Krishna, who gave us a whole bunch of the rares that he played at the GP in DC. Just to be nice. And then the ones that we've opened up. I got a Blast Zone in here. Domri,
sweet.
Luis's favorite, Parhelion 2.
I do like that card, though. Every time I tried to play it, I lost.
There's some sweet stuff. Anyway, but I'll dig up a thing for that a little bit later. I just forgot to get to do the randomization thing. Anyway, first impressions. So first things first. You've loved Sealed, right? Like I've watched your stream a bunch, and you've just been loving it.
Yeah, I mean, look, to be honest, I played Sealed because Draft wasn't available, but it was really fun. I ended up streaming Sealed 2 days in a row, and I did about 10 Sealeds. So I was really into it. So the reason I liked M20 Sealed so much is the deck building felt pretty interesting, because the common cycle of, well, not quite commons, the come to play tap lands that gain the life, or Evolving Wilds, I guess, are on this like weird, like 5 out of 14 or something packs have them, or some nonsense like that. I don't know.
What do you mean?
They're not as common as, there's not one per pack, but they're more common than commons.
I see. Are they not one per pack?
There's not one per pack. So you don't always have a common land, but there's enough of them that you get a couple per sealed, and that those help splash. Scuttle Mud helps splash. Gift of Paradise helps splash, and ended up building a lot of interesting sealed decks, and the games were just really good. That's just a big part of it, is I found the games to be pretty high quality. Like, sure, sometimes someone does play a Cavalier or a Gargos or a big Chandra and you just lose, but a lot of the rares are answerable with removal. There's a lot of good removal. Some of the removals even splashable. There's some counter spells in the format as well. I found the games to be good enough that I kept wanting to play them. So a couple of quick notes for Sealed, even though I think I would like to do a Sealed episode later as well. The Sultai colors tended to be better than red or white, so green, black, or blue, especially since green was almost always a good base. Where
that's just good life advice right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. The fact that Gift of Paradise and Leafkin Druid are both commons, and Gift helps fix colors, and Leafkin Druid ramps to your important cards, that was pretty good. Plus, I love Mammoth Spider in Sealed, and Netcaster is also pretty good. So you ended up playing green base a lot, but your gold cards determined where you would go. White just ended up being very shallow, as did red, though you still can play those colors sometimes, of course.
Yeah.
Elemental synergies are really good. Risen Reef, by the way, I think is just one of the best. It might be one of the best 20 cards in the set.
Oh, yeah. It's great.
It's a 3-mana 1/1 that draws you a card immediately, sometimes even ramps you if that card happens to be a land. And it sits in play and draws you like 2 to 4 more cards over the course of the game if they don't kill it. And if they do kill it, you just got a 2-for-1 plus mana ramp potentially for 3 mana.
It's insane, because I've noticed this play pattern. In fact, I've been on the wrong end of it a few times where I felt compelled to point a row removal spell at their Risen Reef. Right? Yeah. If my deck isn't applying pressure in a meaningful way, I'm just like, well, murder your Risen Reef, and it's just like, that feels awful.
Like I had a game in the draft tournament I was in yesterday, where they had a slow start and played Risen Reef, and I had to return to Ash, and I just played another 5/5 and then killed their next thing, and it ended up working out. But that's the sort of thing where if they have like an unsummon or a turn where they just play 2 spells, all of a sudden you're just down so many cards to Risen Reef, you're not going to win it because you didn't end up killing them in time.
Right. And it's, you're playing with fire. And I mean, it is true that people will play Risen Reef basically in any deck that can cast it because it's worth it just straight up. But, it does vary quite wildly from there, right? Like if they're a dedicated elementals deck, then that might be one of the best cards in their deck, full stop. And if they're not, then they might get an occasional trigger off of it. So that is kind of the walk that you walk there is, do I really use my removals? You should. One of the things that you could do to help make up some of that, for example, is if it's later, like if it's game 3 and they play Risen Reef, you shouldn't have a heuristic in your head that's just like always kill the Risen Reef, right? Even though you should lean in that direction. Think about the prior 2 games. Did they play a lot of elementals? If they did, you got to kill the Risen Reef. If they didn't, you might be able to, craft a game plan around letting it survive. And
that's part of why the card is so good is if in game 1 you play a turn 3 Risen Reef, your opponent's going to take their turn off to cast Murder on it. You could have no other elementals in your deck. They wouldn't know.
Yeah, and you effectively 2-for-1 them on their best removal spell.
If it's literally Murder, they'll probably wait to see if you play an elemental and kill it in response. But in a lot of cases, they're going to have to leave up the mana to, if they want to do that, in which case they'll often end up killing it regardless. Respect
the Reef.
Oh, yeah. The Risen Reef is the real deal. But yeah, Sealed's fun. I would recommend it. I got to get a lot of play in with the cards, and it left me feeling pretty prepared for draft, which I've also done a bunch of now because, as I kind of mentioned, I played in a draft tournament yesterday. Twitch Rivals does these tournaments every couple months, and we got to do a team draft. So it was me and Gabby Sparts where we each did 3 drafts, played against random people. It's just on Arena, and you total your records. And we didn't make the top 4.
That is
sadly.
So sweet.
But
Man,
it was a lot of fun. Though. Yeah, I went 1-2, 5-0.
I gotta get in on one of these.
2-2, and it was a lot of fun. So
they never invite me. Why don't I get to play one of these things? That sounds sweet.
2 things. One, you should stream because that's kind of where they do it. So you're not going to do that.
I forgot.
Second, once you do stream, I can tell you who to message to try to get on the invite list. Because I didn't get invited last time, et cetera. Like it's not a guarantee by any stretch.
But you actually stream, and Gabby streams all the time.
So. Well, yeah,
it's going to be hard for me to make that case.
Damn, I can't have everything I want.
Yeah, otherwise I just have to complain about it. So Sealed for me, Sealed for me hasn't been quite as fun. I thought it was fine, but I remember watching your stream and seeing you rave about it. Me being kind of like, well. Yeah, I guess it's fine. One of the things that I noticed is the pools tend to vary like even more wildly than normal, mainly because they've got a couple of cycles, particularly the Leyline cycle and the Scryland cycles are rare, which eat up a whole lot of, relatively blank slots. The Leylines being like basically actual blanks, and the Scrylands, they'll often make the cut in the deck. It's not that they're perfectly serviceable cards, but they're C's or something. They're not, they're not great. And they're certainly not bombs or anything approaching that. And, you can open up a sealed pool and get 2 to 3 of these. And you're like, well, this is going to be rough. If somebody, opened 0 or 1 of them, they have a much better chance because you know how it is. Like when you open up your sealed pool, there are occasionally times when you open up a really good card and your pool just doesn't really comply to it, right? And you're like, oh man, like I really want to play this card, but it's just like my pool really wants to be green-black and my good card is triple blue or whatever, and I just can't make it work. Or you do play it and you make your deck, you have to like accommodate it in a big way. Well, you need as many shots at that as possible. Right, of getting the good rares to get in. And if some of them kind of are disappearing because there's a decent percentage of the rares that are kind of just off the radar as far as what you want to be putting in your deck, it does make it very swingy. You get to the back of the pack and it's like, oh, it's a ley line. I guess I'm screwed.
Look, Sealed still has the thing where everyone gets to play all their bombs, and you're going to run into people who have 3 good rares in the same 2 colors, and it's going to be really rough. But I found this sealed format to be more engaging than most. And
yeah, I actually have found it to be quite good too in the gameplay, which is what you highlighted as well. And I think that the reason for that is something that you touched on, which is the common removal, right? This was one of the things that stood out the most to us during the set review. I just remember being floored at Murder being printed at Common again. It's just such a break from what we've been used to. And the last 2 sets have really delivered, premium removal at Common. And I got to say, it feels great. Like having answers to their bomb feels awesome. Like, especially some of the cheaper high impact cards where it's felt like for the past years, you just have not had answers, right? If they cast a 3 or 4 mana card, that was really impactful, like you were praying to hit your 5th land so you could use your clunky 5 mana removal to kill it. And now you can just snap the thing off with 3 mana or sometimes even 2. And I got to say, I miss this more than I recognized, I think. I think I kind of talked myself into liking the new way. But this is good too. I really like having access to premium removal at common again. It just feels like it balances that out a little bit, where if I manage my removal properly, I can actually deal with one of their bombs. Yeah, which hasn't always felt that way lately.
I think that is a pretty significant upside to where things are going right now.
Yeah, another impression is the pumped up commons. We highlighted a few of them on the set review. They have had an impact on pack one, pick ones. I think that we really kind of got used to, like, you look through the commons, but the reality is that you should just look to the uncommons and the rare, because there are numerous uncommons that you would take over any common in an average set for the past like 5 years or whatever, where, these commons, they stake their claim for first picks, right? Cards like Murder, Chandra's Outrage, the Trample Monkey.
Murder is likely in around the top 20 cards in the set as well,
Mm-hmm, right. And there's even some others though, like the 5/4 and the Thief. I've really thought the Thief was playing out amazingly well. What is it called? Audacious Thief? Yeah.
Yeah, Audacious Thief. Definitely.
Yeah, and these are type of cards that really do make you go, well, you're going to have to bring some heat here at the uncommon slot to knock off one of these, where, you go back a couple of sets and you can find, the removal spells, and even the premium, air quotes, black removal spells at common. There was many uncommons that you would just be like, well, I'm taking this uncommon over it, because the cards just weren't as in high demand. So I like that a lot. That change seems to have affected the draft a little bit, and perhaps made pack one, pick ones a little more interesting, right? Just a little bit more, contentious there. The deck that stood out to me the most, has been, maybe it's just the most obvious deck, has been Elementals, though. You touched on it with the Risen Reef stuff, but that deck, it has the most sort of the most synergies built in a way that you want to play anyway, right? You're like, well, I want to play these creatures and I want to cast them and put them on the board. And now you're just like, oh, I got all this extra sweet stuff for doing so. Cloud Conceer has been dumb. That card is just as good as advertised.
Cloud Conceer is obscene. I think that like you said, the combination of wanting these cards anyway and then them combining to be great. Like Leafkin Druid and Cloud Conceer are both really good cards. And the fact that they have additional elemental synergies just makes them awesome. I've been mostly impressed with blue-green, red-green elementals. I haven't played the full 3 colors quite as often. I think Omnath is a really good reason to do that, or Risen Reef, cards that are worth splashing. But I've really liked red. I drafted red-green elementals like 4 times.
Okay.
And basically, Leafkin Druid into Lavakin Brawler with the Scampering Scorcher, the 4 mana make 3 1/1s with haste.
Yeah,
you can just do so much damage to your opponent, and also that your Leafkin Druid starts tapping for 2 mana. You end up with enough mana to really do a lot in the same turn. Thicket Crasher gives your Lavakin Brawlers trample. Goblin Smuggler can make it unblockable. You start cracking for 7 out of nowhere. So I really am high on all the elemental cards as a result. I don't play the 1 mana 1/1, the Spitter or whatever that pings for 1/1 attacks, but I am. Oh yeah. I'm happy to play to play and take aggressively almost all the other elementals like the Ember Cat and stuff like that.
Yeah, is the 1 mana, what is it, a 1/2 that gains you 3 life? Is that an elemental?
Yeah, I don't like that one. Healer of the Glade.
I don't. Yeah, is that what it's called? I don't play that one either, but the other ones I do.
Yeah, for sure.
Another deck that I've been kind of attracted to in draft particularly has been blue-black. It just has all the tools. It is the classic limited control deck. It's uncommon, lines up with it, the lifelink Death Toucher that lets you loot, and everything's here. You have the cheap removal with, if you're lucky, a disfigure, but murder. And then you have like the middle removal with the lightning helix thing. And, you can kind of kill anything on the other side of the battlefield. You can even, whatever, sleep paralysis or whatever it's called. And then you have ways to win the game late.
Meteor Golem, Scholar of Ages, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. The treachery one, the one that steals a creature. So I just feel like while there aren't any particularly great synergies going on, all the tools are here. And so that's a deck that you can definitely draft. I have had some weird games, which I think is a compliment early. At the pre-release, I was playing a very, very grindy deck that I kind of went a little deep on, but it was kind of sweet. And at one point, I remember thinking like, I'm kind of win condition light, and I was playing another grindy deck on the other side of the battlefield, and I brought in two of the, I think it's called Loaming Shaman.
Oh yeah,
the 2 and a green 3/2 that lets you shuffle any number of cards back into a library, and I just brought those in as like a win condition. Like I was just like, well, I'll just bring these in so I don't get decked and you do.
Yeah.
And it worked. Like that's exactly what happened. And like, normally when I think of core set sealed, would this happen to be in sealed? I don't really think of like needing to go deep into the sideboard like that. And this format, even in the early stages, has produced a few moments like that. So I like that. Oh, I've got a great, I guess, bad beat story. So it's just I put a bad beat on Adam. So we went to the pre-release together, my buddy Adam, and we played each other in the first round, of course, because that's just the rule. If you go to a pre-release with somebody or to any tournament with somebody, then you're going to get paired against them. And we were playing it out, and my pool had 2 Cavaliers in it. I opened the promo blue foil one, for the pre-release, and then I opened naturally the black one. And so I obviously built around those. And I had a super funny moment where I was just winning anyway. Like I was way ahead because I had cast the blue Cavalier. Well, Adam used a removal spell to kill it. And that one gets shuffled back into your library when it dies. And then you scry 2. And so I shuffle my library up and I scry 2, and it's both Cavaliers. And I'm like, I just started laughing because it was just so stupid, and I just showed him. It was just like, this is the best scry in the history of, and I'm like, I'll top both, go. And he's just like shook his head like, this is just stupid. So yeah, you do get some fun moments like that. That of course make it all worthwhile to go to a pre-release with somebody and then stomp them with 2 broken mythics. I've had Golos twice. Yeah, that card is freaking awesome. We loved it in the set review, and it is great.
Yeah, this is the 5-mana really 3/5 Solemn Simulacrum. Mm-hmm. It gets you a Rampant Growth Seal, and then you can pay
any land.
Yeah, and you can pay 1 of each color plus 2, so 7 mana to flip the top 3 cards and play all of them.
Yeah, and you exile them and you can play them for free. I have activated it multiple times already. I have to say the difference between getting a land and any land. Look, in Commander or wherever else people play this, that's going to be huge. In Limited, I thought, well, maybe it actually is huge. You just can so often end up with the random duel in your deck that can help you get a color that you wouldn't have had almost for free to activate Golos' ability. And that part is very relevant. You can play the card without that text, and it's still very much worth it. But I've already activated this card a lot. Like it is not impossible to do so. And once you start doing so, the game just slips away.
Oh, totally. One thing that it has been interesting is the renowned Weaponsmith, the 1 in a blue, 1/3. You can pay a blue and tap it and search for Vial of Dragonfire or the Heartseeker bow, Heart Piercer bow. Mm-hmm. And you can tap it for 2 mana to cast artifacts or activate artifacts. I think that card is a lot better than it was when it was in Con/Dragons. And as a result, like I think I would increase my rating of that card quite a bit. I found that.
So like how much are we talking here?
Basically, I think I don't mind speculating on one early in the first couple picks. Like, it's not as good as the good commons. I'm not saying this is a bomb, but I'm saying it's pretty easy to pick up like a vial in a bow or 2 vials in a bow or even more sometimes because other people don't tend to want those cards. And the other thing is I've had a lot of success in a deck that has a couple of other artifacts. Like this casts Meteor Golem on turn 5.
Ooh, that's interesting. I did not think of that.
Yeah, it's just like
oof. Yeah, turn 5 Meteor Golem's gross.
Right, and it helps cast Scuttle Mud. It helps cast Anvil Raptor. Any of these like artifacts. All of a sudden, like if you end up having other artifacts in your deck, the card gets pretty good. And I think I'm going to be updating my ratings on that. Actually, I have something kind of cool to share for people who play Arena. If you go to untapped.gg, it's a website that they used to do Hearthstone deck trackers. They actually do Arena stuff now. And what you can do is you can download this application, this extension that when you open your Arena pack, you can see my set review ratings overlaid on each card.
What? Seriously?
Yeah. So you can...
That's cool.
You can see this and the comments of what I've written about the cards as well.
Yeah, well, those aren't really valuable.
I was using it yesterday while I was streaming. It's pretty neat. I think, basically the Untapped folks just asked me like, "Hey, can we use your ratings?" And I said, sure, as long as you like link back to the set reviews, credit me for the work I did, which they did. Definitely went above and beyond in doing so. And I think it's a cool thing. Like, I actually think it's a neat little thing, and you can get whatever value you want out of those. And part of the reason I want to go update old ratings is they continuously pull from my articles. So if I go back and update the ratings, then it actually will update on the deck tracker. It gives me incentive to do that.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah.
It's untapped.gg.
Untapped.gg. Yeah, it is cool.
I'll put it in the notes.
I like the project, and I think it's neat. Like, you get to see what I say about each card. Again, whether that has value or not, that's kind of up to you to decide. But I think it is a pretty cool value add.
Oh, I think we've all decided that a long time ago. Okay, one thing that I have to mention, this is a little bit narrow, but I have had Big Chandra twice now, and I have learned a valuable lesson about the play patterns with Chandra. When I played her first, I was thinking, well, you know what I'll try to do here? I'm going to try to do kind of the normal Planeswalker thing, which is try to get value by controlling the board, right? Like that's a really good starting place. If a Planeswalker has the ability to affect the board meaningfully, it's often correct to just do that. Like, minus the thing to kill the creature on board, and then kind of get value from the Planeswalker later. Well, Chandra's plus ability is each opponent gets an emblem with at the beginning of your upkeep. It does 1 damage to them. -3, it does 3 damage to each non-elemental creature, which if that's good, then you'll know right away and you can just do that. And then -X does X damage to a creature or Planeswalker, and then it gets exiled if it gets damage from that, or if it dies that turn. So I was like -3 and -Xing and trying to control the board. And then at one point I was like, wait a second, this thing comes down with 6 loyalty and +2s. I'm like, I have 2 creatures that can just block or trade or do something. So I'm just going to start plussing Chandra. So I'm like, plus go. So they take 1 on their upkeep and they're like, okay, 8 loyalty. They're like, attack everything as Chandra. Like, okay, trade a thing off or whatever. And then, Chandra goes down by 2 loyalty back down to 6. And then they play a thing and say go. And I'm like, plus Chandra, she's at 8 again. You have 2 of these stupid emblems. I play a creature, go. Even if they kill one of my things and attack with everything, Chandra's still at 3. And then I plus again, and she's back up to 5. And if they can't kill her that time, then, even if she's just at 1 loyalty after the dust settles, I just plus again. Look, once you get the 3rd emblem on somebody and they've been spending all of their time and effort attacking Chandra and trying to get her off the board, the game's over. Like, they're taking 3 damage a turn, and you still get to draw a card and play spells every turn. So my default is now just to plus, and then, let my opponent try to beat Chandra. There, of course, are many scenarios where minusing either of the minus is going to be superior to that. So keep your eye out. But it did take me a while to break from the normal pattern. So if you get lucky and get a Chandra, don't be afraid to just plus, because I found that almost unbeatable. And by the way, that card's insane. We loved it. We gave it an A or an A+. I can't remember, but it is every bit of that. So. Any other final thoughts on M20 before we move on?
No, I have enjoyed the draft in sealed format. I look forward to playing M20. It's going to be a little tricky because I was
going to say, are you going to actually play M20?
I am, but I do have a Modern Horizons Pro Tour coming up in a couple weeks, so that's going to delay things a little bit.
Yeah, it's tough. I find myself in a very weird spot too, because the what did you call it? A pro tour? I'm not sure what that is, but the Mythic Championship coming up is this format. And so I need to,
this format being Modern Horizons. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I need to make sure that I'm up to speed on that. So I've been playing that on Magic Online. And then, GP Vegas is also going to be Modern Horizons for the limited portion. Are we playing M20 in anything?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. So, I'm still going to play it. Like it's, I don't base, what I play solely off of what I'm, thinking about from the pro scene. But at the same time, it's like a little weird that it's falling in a thing. Although I'll say I'm kind of happy about it, because even though M20 seems like a pretty sweet set, Modern Horizons is a really, really sweet set, and I'll take as much of that as I can get. Okay, let's move on to the Sunset Show now. Dude, stop messaging Paul. I see it. I see it right there. I see it on my screen. Why are you doing that?
Excuse me?
Yeah, don't even ask. Dude, I'm getting in this chat. Tell Paul to leave you alone. Paul, we are recording. What just happened? He got all sad in here all of a sudden? Is this a Sunset Show music?
No, this is you writing Paul a heartfelt letter to tell him to stop messaging our group chat while we're recording.
Dearest Paul, tell Luis to STFU. All right. Sunset Show. Let's get into it for War of the Spark. First thing, let's do our last Crack-A-Pack. This one comes to us from Xander. Thank you, Xander, for the pack. I met Xander at a recent GP as well, and he was kind enough to give me a sweet pack. Okay, first card out is Naga Eternal. Not going to pick it. It's the 3/2 for 2 and a blue. Next is Goblin Assailant. Wow, Vanilla City here. 1 and a red for a 2/2. If these are your first two cards from War of the Spark, you'd be like, this set is so lame. There's nothing going on. But it does get better, although not with this pick. Locks it on Sergeant, 3 and a white. It's a 3/3 Vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, other creatures you control get Vigilance. No, that card never really saw play. Courage and Crisis.
This is the put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, then proliferate for 2 and a green. Yeah, this card's fine. And I'd be pretty unhappy to first pick it.
Agree. Sorin's Thirst. Most disappointing removal spell in a long time.
Yeah, Sorin's Thirst really deduct it there. Black, deal 2, gain 2, to a creature only. That's not good.
No, it just ended up not really finding a home in the format. I mean, you could put it in your deck, but it just really was low impact, and you were kind of excited. It's I don't know what the name of the cards like this is, but it's the type of card that when you do find a target, you're like, yes, like like thank goodness I actually got to use this stupid Sorin's Thirst on something. It felt almost like having a sideboarded card in your main deck. Herald of the Dreadhorde, not a Planeswalker, but a playable. 3 and a black, 3/2. When it dies, you amass 2.
Yep.
It's fine. This pack's been pretty bad, though. Thundering Ceratok, 4 and a green, 4/5 trample.
Wow, none of these cards are close to what I remember wanting to first pick in War.
No, and we're going even further down that particular rabbit hole. Wall of Runes is next. Blue for an 0/4 defender. It's scry 1 when it ETBs. That is pretty bad. All right, we got one. This is our last common. This is our last common ever from War of the Spark, and it's Spark Harvest. Right. So actually got there. A fine first pick, black for sorcery, destroy target creature or planeswalker, but you got to either sack a creature or pay 3 and a black as an additional.
Yeah, totally fine card. I was never unhappy first picking that.
Yeah, but now let's get to the uncommons. First one is Chandra's Triumph, so quite good. 1 and a red instant, does 3 damage to a creature, planeswalker, 5 damage if you control.
I like that one a little more than Spark Harvest.
Me too. They're close. Emergence Zone. No, this taps for colorless. You can pay 1, tap, sack it to cast spells as though they had flash. Non-playable. Narset, Parter of Veils. 1 blue. Well, whatever. Everybody knows what Narset does by now, I assume.
Oh, yeah. I would first pick Narset over Chandra's Triumph, I think.
I think I would too.
It's just so powerful.
Okay, here's we got a foil forest that I'll put in the
Sweet.
Next,
also, Narset is also worth a pretty penny, I believe.
Is she really?
Played in everything.
She'll go in there too.
Every format.
Yeah, that's true. She'll go in there too. This is a really cool one, actually, I think, to put up against it, because I think at the beginning of the format, I would have been lower on this card, and now I'm higher, though I don't think I'm quite as high as Narset, but it's Bioessence Hydra. This is the 3-green-blue 4/4 Trampler. When it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter for each loyalty counter on planeswalkers you control, and whenever one or more loyalty counters are put on planeswalkers, it gets that many counters.
This card is amazing.
It's way better than it looks like.
It's just frequently a 10/10 or something, or a 9/9. It's just not hard to pick up one planeswalker in addition. And remember, if you play a planeswalker afterwards, like if you play a Narset after Hydra, it'll get +5/+5.
Right. And it stays. Oh, yeah. So the question is, do you like it better than Narset?
I do. I would take the Bioessence Hydra first pick here.
I think I would take the Narset. Maybe I'm still like, I have the bad, like your initial impression on something is hard to shake. And I remember thinking, I thought, well, it's a little dream worldy, right? Yeah. A little Christmas landy, but it's really not. Like there's planeswalkers all the time. And like you said, oftentimes you just played it, it's like a 7/7 to start with. And there's like, all right. Yeah, you're probably right. Probably the Hydra. All right, let's get into the Sunset Show and bid adieu to our old friend, War of the Spark. First thing, if you could summarize the set in one sentence, what would it be? I would say great common removal is back, baby. Also planeswalkers.
First of all, it's 2 sentences.
What if I put a comma?
You'd have to restructure it, but you could get there in one.
Yeah.
My one sentence would be RTFC.
Okay, that's also not a sentence. But,
well, it's an acronym for a sentence. Read the freaking card.
Yep. Man, this has been easily the most RTFC set ever.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It's not even close.
No. Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit down the line. We're referring mainly to the static abilities on all the planeswalkers, but a lot going on in this set. What turned out to be the best archetypes? I had the green-black 4-color deck I liked a lot, and I liked blue-red spells. What else stood out to you?
Those were the two I liked the most. Blue-black Amask could be pretty good, too. And
yeah, you could do stuff with
didn't like red-white or green-white very much. But white has just kind of sucked in all these sets. It'd be cool if white was good in one of these limited sets, because it hasn't been for a while.
It's interesting. It's interesting how bad it's been consistently, isn't it? Like every set of, we have our own tendencies, but even just taking those out, I just feel like white is bad.
I just feel like a lot of the commons they tend to make in white are not powerful. Like they're like, okay, let's make a destroy a tapped creature or conditional removal. It's just not very good. Let's make mediocre flyers. It's not often that white, because white doesn't really get any sort of card advantage. It doesn't get anything that's like good removal or anything particularly efficient. So yeah. If I had to make a list of like all the best archetypes in War of the Spark, white would probably not be very high on that list.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, how many white, 2 and a white 3/2s that have something that happens when you get to attack have we seen? Yeah. Right? Like that's just not where you want to be. What were some of the most underrated cards? I remember early on, Ugin's Conjurant was one that you and I liked quite a bit, but people were a little slow to pick up on.
That one definitely ended up being one of the most underrated cards. Toll the Invasion skyrocketed in my estimation after playing with it for a few times.
We underrated it.
Totally. Tybalt, Rakish Instigator, just mainly because anytime someone asked, what should I take in this pack, it was always Tybalt.
Yeah. For us, it was funny how many Twitter threads we had that were just take the Tybalt. Yeah.
Yep. And then Role Reversal, the rare for blue-red sorcery, let you switch two permanents of the same type with your opponent, or switch a permanent with the same type with one of your opponents. That card ended up being really good, partially because of amass tokens and leftover planeswalkers that didn't have much loyalty. It just ended up being a very strong card.
Yeah, that one's a classic, hard to it actually kind of was a 1-2 punch as far as how to evaluate, because on one hand it was weird, right? And weird cards are just, hard to evaluate. And then the second one was that typically cards that do this exchange aren't great. They're not necessarily awful, like Switcheroo and stuff. You can play those, but they're not amazing. But this one ended up being actually quite good. Like the cost actually mattered quite a bit. So tough one to do. What were the most controversial cards?
Obnixilus, it was hard to use. Obnixilus, the Hate Twisted. There was the Planeswalker that could destroy any creature, but the creature's controller draws 2 cards.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like people would too often put this in like mid-range or control decks, blow up their opponent's creature, and then lose because they were down on cards. So
exactly.
That one, I think, ended up being the best in aggro decks because it did do a damage to your opponent for each card they drew, or in decks that would use it to target its own stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly. You almost never wanted to play this in a mid-range deck, and if you did, you were blowing up your own stuff, period. Which is totally weird. Because once you see a Planeswalker that has the text destroy target creature on it, you're like, all right, control deck, let's do this. And that was just not the case. Oh, God. Super controversial. How do you say it again? Arboreal
Grazer.
Oh, God. We're going to talk about this guy a lot. This card, man, people love this thing. Even to this day, you fire up War of the Spark and people still play it against you on turn 1. And,
I lost to it in the War of the Spark Pro Tour. So, yeah. Arboreal Grazer definitely... I don't know why it's controversial, because I think it's just completely terrible, but enough people played it that I think we could definitely put that label on it.
Yep. And people fought us on it. People were like, I like it, Another one that I remember was Vivian's Arc Bow.
Yes.
And the reason I brought this one up is because I have never found this card to be amazing. I found it to be serviceable and have a role. And in certain matchups, it's actually kind of good. And in other matchups, it's really not very good. And I have definitely heard varying opinions from pros down to listeners of the show or whatever. Some people think it's really great, like really just like a top tier style card. And then other people think it's unplayable. And I'm closer to it's bad end of the spectrum, but I can definitely see the spots where it's good. And I have lost to it and I have played it and felt like it pulled its weight. I've never been blown away by it though, ever. I never thought, wow, this card's just amazing. And I've heard some people say that.
I do not like the card. And I think part of it is it feels like the best case scenario in a lot of cases is you end up even on cards and get a creature that you paid for. And when you miss, you paid 5 mana and discarded a card and got nothing or something weak. So I again think the Arc Bow, not where you want it to be.
Yeah, it's a weird one because it challenges that notion, right? Because on one hand, you're thinking in terms of just straight up cards. But, the situation where you want this card is you have 5 or 6 lands on the battlefield and you draw and you have it and then you draw a land and you turn that into a creature, right? So even though you're even on cards in that case, you've upgraded a land into a creature on the battlefield, which is, that's worth a ton, right? That's a huge, huge benefit. So I don't know. It's weird. It's not your normal type of card. What was your favorite artwork in this set? What did you like?
I like the Japanese version of Ugin.
Yeah.
Basically, they did the thing where all the Planeswalkers got a Japanese alternate art, and it was so cool. Like, they all look really awesome.
Yeah, the Ugin one I think is particularly good. Some of them are kind of meh. Like, have you seen the Gideon, for example? Yeah. Like, I like the non-special version a lot better. There's a few that are kind of, I don't know. I mean, I think they were going for a specific look, but they're a little, I don't know. I don't know how to describe them, but they look a little too cartoony or something. I don't know.
They were kind of like anime themed or anime style.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't want to knock them too hard, but maybe I just prefer the other art for a lot of them. But the Ugin one's really cool. I really like Death Sprout for the art. I mean, it was creepy and gross, but it was just like really cool, executed and weird, and just made you kind of feel uncomfortable. And I thought that really succeeded. And then honorable mentions were Lazotep plating, which was just extremely well done. And I really like the Wanderer. The Wanderer being like very mysterious, like her face is covered up. There's no name. It's just Planeswalker.
Everyone knows that the Wanderer is Emrakul by now.
The Wanderer's Emrakul? Okay, I did not know that. But I like it. What were the best build-around cards in this set? One that jumped to mind for me, and this is very strange because it doesn't happen, was actually a common. Yeah. And it was Spellgorger Weird.
Yeah, I mean, Spellgorger Weird, this is a 2 and a red 2/2 that gets a ++1 counter whenever you play a non-creature spell. This card grew really fast.
It really did. And you could build around it in a very reasonable way. And it felt cool because a lot of the build around cards are uncommon and some of them are even rare. And if you say, okay, it's third pick, I'm going to take this uncommon build around and hope we get there. You know, one of the things that sucks about that is that even if you do get there, sometimes you don't draw your build around card. And then you're like, well, now what am I doing with my life? Where here you could pick the Spellgorger weird early and then have a really good shot at picking up multiples later so that you could really kind of do the thing more consistently.
Yeah. And I think that
cool.
There was a lot of also it was a very well supported synergy because like you end up having cards like Contentious Plan, like a bunch of cantrips like Guild Globe. I don't know. Uh-huh. There's just like a lot of ways that the Spellgorger weird. It's not like you dropped it into a random set.
Right. But also the sweet spot with this one is that the floor is actually kind of high, right? Sure, 2/2 for 3 is not where you want to be, but if you trigger it once, you're already like, okay, that's fine. Yeah. And then it just has this upside that can go up higher. I wonder why it's hard to hit that balance. You know? Like we don't see it that often.
Yeah, I guess it's just hard to have things well supported.
Yeah. I mean, really? Is that you think it's hard? I mean, is it? Like when you're designing a set, is it
well,
is that one of the challenges? Like
it's hard to make sure that things are as supported as you want them to be. Sometimes it definitely is. Like you end up, oh, did we make Spellgorger weird too good? I think part of the reason World of Spark was so successful, and I was going to talk about this later, is they just made everything great. Right? Mm-hmm. Like in a normal set, if a Spellgorger weird was this supported, I think that you could end up in a spot where it overpowers everything else, but it just wasn't going to be the case in World of Spark.
Yeah. What build around cards did you like?
I like Flux Channeler. I found that one to be pretty fun to go off with. And when you had like 4 Planeswalkers out and you were Flux Channeling, it was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that card had the kind of the text that you're like, oh yeah, this could be pretty good. And then when it goes, you're like, holy crap. Right. Like that thing could really, really dominate a board in a way that wasn't necessarily obvious at first read. Did you consider this a Prince or a Pauper set, or the new? Was it a King?
This was actually kind of neither. It was none of those things. There were a lot of good rares, but all the uncommons and commons being pushed meant I didn't feel like I felt like you could definitely win without any rares in your deck. But there was also a lot of really good rares. So it was kind of like a balance between all of those things.
Mm-hmm. How much do you think the fact that they pushed the commoner removal helped balance out? Because I mean, we gave more rares, more rares A's in this set than I think any other set we've covered.
And this is why I think the Sunset Show is particularly useful. That I initially thought this was a King format where the rares were so impactful and so good, but now we're in a spot where I actually kind of feel like the rares were good, but they didn't completely overshadow the cards of other rarities. So yeah, I mean, just after playing a bunch more, that's kind of where I landed.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing that we thought when it first came out was, okay, wow, they've really pushed the rares and really kind of let go with the power level here, but they also gave us the removal. And the question is, does that balance out? And the answer is like, yeah, it kind of did actually. So maybe you can have both. Oh yeah, this is the award for it's a bad card, but I love it anyway. I know your answer.
Yeah, I mean, look, I tried to make Charm Stray work. I even drafted it at the Pro Tour. It did not work.
It did not work. So do you still love it, or do you hate it now because of
No, I think it's cool. I think it was a fun experiment. I wish it had not happened with quite the highest of stakes, but I also think that deck still ended up being okay. So who knows?
You're gonna die on that hill, huh? As you would say. You're gonna go down in flames with your Charm Strays.
Yeah.
You know they would eat you, right?
Oh yeah, a cat. If you died, your cat would start eating you within hours.
Yeah. The card I always play, I just like so stupid, is Augur of Golos.
The Trader of Golos. Look at the bottom 3 cards of your library.
Man, you said that in the set review, and it happened so many times. It was just like, kind of laughable. And yeah, and it it's one of those cards that like, it gives you hope, right? You're like, oh, I might hit, or I've got enough. It should work out fine. And then it's just like, put them on the bottom, put them on the bottom, put them on the bottom. But I'll never quit you, Augur of Bolas. I still like you. I literally never win with it, but it always seems to beat me card. What did you have for that?
Oh, Huatley. I never really got the whole like Charity Extractor Huatley deck going, but oh man, I have lost to that card hard.
Yeah, that is great. That is Charity Extractor Huatley combo. I had Devouring Hellion, which I actually only lost to once, but it felt so bad because every other time I just destroyed that card because it matches up so poorly with a lot of the decks that I like to draft. But I'll tell you what, you lose once to a Devouring Hellion and it feels real bad. All right, this one is obvious, but my opponent played this and now I must quit Magic or win card.
Oh yeah, I mean you had this right. It was Arbour Grazer, and I have lost to it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, me too. I lost to it too. I mean, look, the thing about Arbour Grazer that was kind of interesting is that they gave it reach, right? And I had one game where somebody played it and then put a few counters on it, and then I forgot it had reach, and I attacked my flyer into it, and then it started like attacking me or something. I'm just like, oh, this is unbelievable.
Oh yeah,
but still, usually I beat it. What was the biggest Groan test?
For me, it was Finale of Eternity, which look, it was a mythic. I know it doesn't happen all that often, but that's the Black Finale, and it was the card that most frequently took me from like, well, can't lose this game to like, well, I'm losing this game because they just killed all of my creatures. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't even for like 10 mana. It was for like 6 mana or 5 mana.
Yeah, 5 mana, 3 for 1U.
Oh, yeah.
Attack with everything. Yeah, that was a huge Groan test. A great choice. The one for me was Bond of Passion. That was the 6 mana, steal your guy 2/2 damage to something. Because that card wasn't good at all. And most of the time, people just didn't play it. And so that was the one card that you're like, okay, I'm stable. I've got my 2 blockers. I'm going to kill you in the air next turn. Everything's good. Go ahead. And then they're like, land number 6, Bond of Passion, kill your small blocker, steal your big blocker, kill you. And you're like, oh my God. Like, is this, like that was the card that could steal a game that you, if you forgot it existed, could feel that it was unstealable. And that's exactly the Groan test, right? Where you're just like, I had this and it stole it. But Finale of Eternity, I would actually vote with you on that one. That is the one where you're just like, come on, this can't be real. But like you said, mythic, thankfully. What was the most frustrating, quote, bad card to lose to? A card that you will not miss playing against or that annoyed you. These don't have to be like, I picked Ashiok Dream Render, and I don't think Ashiok was a bad card. I do think that people main decked Ashiok way too often. I think they just threw Ashiok in the deck like, oh, well, hey, this is it's a Planeswalker and it's in my colors, so I'm just going to play it. Even though like it wasn't on plan and didn't really do anything. There were some control decks that needed a win condition and you could play Ashiok in that spot. But there was a lot of times when it was just like random mid-range deck that happened to be playing blue or whatever, and they would just play Ashiok. And the thing is that in the right matchup, that card's fantastic, right? If you're playing against another slow deck or a control deck or whatever, Ashiok does serious work. But for the most part, it isn't. So it felt really bad because if I happen to be playing a control deck and they just have this like silver bulletish card against me in like the main deck, even though I know if they play some aggressive deck that card's going to be basically a blank, that's when I'm just like, come on, that's when you get frustrated because you know that it only happened to be good versus you, even though on average that card, wouldn't be great. What about for you?
It actually was Ashiok too, because I've had this experience where I feel like I'm pretty covered, and then Ashiok just demolishes me because it's the kind of card that beats these like kind of more controlling or synergy-driven decks that are a little slower but are trying to gear up a big engine, where there's like Ashiok mill you for 12, and it's like, oh, okay. It just basically cards that attack at a different angle than what you're prepared for are always pretty frustrating to lose to because you feel like you're so prepared, and then it turns out you're just not.
Yeah. Another one that I had was Dreadhorde Butcher. That's the black-red 1/1 haste, and when it hits you, it gets counters. I don't think that card's very good. It's playable, like, worst case scenario, it's like still okay. But it was so rare that you would actually start getting attacked by it and have it start gaining a bunch of counters and stuff that it felt really bad if it ever did start connecting, because it just, at any point during the game outside of like they're on the play turn 2, the card wasn't really, really very good.
Yeah.
What was the bombiest bomb? What was the number one card you hope to open up in your pack one, pick one, or in your sealed pool?
Ugin by a mile, just because it was colorless. So it gave you flexibility. Like, look, Liliana, Finale of Eternity, Finale of Glory, the white one, Ral. These cards are all comparable to Ugin in terms of game effects, but Ugin's colorless. It means you can first pick Ugin and second pick whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nissa.
Oh yeah, Nissa was a big one too. And that's part of what is this set just had these. It had a higher top end than most sets do.
Mm-hmm.
But it
had to be Oog.
Turned out everything else was also so powerful, from the lowly Spellgorger weirds, to the tippity top of the rares.
Yeah, but Ugin was that card was so good, and the fact that it was colorless just was obscene. All right, what was the best common for each color? I had Wanderer's Strike for white. Aven Eternal I gave for blue, even though I think you could make a good argument for Callous Dismissal. Do you have Aven Eternal or Callous Dismissal is the best blue common?
I think Eternal early in the draft. Callous Dismissal becomes better later when you already have a good synergy deck and need some early plays.
Okay. For black, I had Ob Nixilis's Cruelty. I think Spark Harvest is in the conversation, but I think Cruelty is a better, I'd rather have my first Cruelty.
Definitely.
Jaya's Greeting I had for red. And then for green, I had Bloomhulk.
Yeah, I think Bloomhulk was the best green common.
Yeah, Bloomhulk was good. And that's the kind of card I really like to see pushed for green. I like things that are centrally green. The question I have is, what is the white version of that? Right? Because sure, you could just take a removal spell and push it. But yeah, you mentioned it before. I wonder what that would even look like. Right? You could just take a removal spell and make it really good. But Bloomhulk feels very green, right? But also pushed. I don't know what the white version looks like. This was actually a hard one. What is the mythic uncommon for this?
Kaya for sure.
Kaya for sure. That was my first inclination and what I put down first. But why? Is it just because she goes in whatever 40% of the decks or something? Or
yes, it's because Kaya again is comparable power level to a lot of things that are around, but is just so easy to cast. I mean, triple color looks like a lot, but she's black or white. So I think it's certainly Kaya as the mythic uncommon.
Okay. What was the worst card in the set? The biggest blank, the most last picked. I had. I feel bad for doing this. I had Banehound.
Banehound wasn't the worst card in the set because it actually just
it's a creature
that does something like I think Demolish might actually be worse. But
okay, we've given it to Demolish before, and I wanted to punish.
Sure.
I wanted to punish Banehound a little, for being so bad.
One card I had that was really deceptive. Not the worst card in the set, but again pretty bad. Storm the Citadel, the 5-mana sorcery that give everything +2/+2, because that card looked like it was an overrun, but it turned out it was just kind of sucky. Yeah,
another honorable mention is Godpharaoh's statue. But that just ended up having that fun little thing with Karn every once in a while that I didn't want to ding it.
Yeah.
What about Emergent Zone? What if we gave it to Emergent Zone?
Emergent Zone is also it's not the most last picked is always going to be a common, of course, but Emergent Zone is also one of the biggest blank in the set.
A good point. Charmstray? No? All right. Which card was the most begrudgingly playable? I have 2 nominations here. I'll let you pick between them unless you have a better. The first one is Erratic Visionary. That's the 1 in a blue 1/3, and you can pay 1 in a blue, tap it to loot, which always underperformed. And then the other is Vivian's Grizzly, the 2 in a green 2/3. You can play 3 in a green to look at the top, so whatever. Me too. I hated both of these actually. So, but you know what? I did play both of these occasionally.
Yeah.
What do you think? I think Vivian's Grizzly?
I think it was the Vivian's Grizzly because I think the Erratic Visionary, I wasn't unhappy to have one in my deck. The Grizzly was just so bad. No one ever hit with it. All you did is spend 4 mana to look at look at the bottom card of your deck.
It did feel like that. Oh man. Is there a card that you will miss drafting?
For me, it's Flux Channeler. Ugin's Conjurant was also pretty high on the list. Both those cards are just, I don't know, I found them to be pretty fun. The Conjurant mostly because it was always just such a pleasant surprise how much better value it was than it looked like it was going to be.
Yeah, with the whole Death Touch stuff and all that, it interacted really well. And then you could, proliferate onto it quite often. What What was the LSV-ist card?
I think Tybalt ended up being pretty high up there because Tybalt...
You are a big fan of Tybalt. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, Tybalt just really got there for me. And also led to like some cool sack decks. I liked it enabling Heartfire. I liked it in red-black. I don't know. It was good at Proliferate. Just did all the things I wanted to, and it was like tricky little value accumulation. So it was good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mine was definitely Callous Dismissal. You had me, man. Yeah. When you said it was a baby Man War on the set review, I'm like, oh, I'm in. And it turns out it actually just matched up super well with the format as well, and ended up being quite a powerful card. Again, we were discussing as possibly the best blue common, but for me, it was just like little mini jellyfish every time. What was Marshall's soapboxiest card? Definitely the Arboreal Grazer. Not even close. Boy, this has been the most difficult card to get out of people's hands since what's it called? The 1 mana artifact that let you change your colors and gain 3 life. What was that stupid thing called? Whatever, from a few sets ago. You know the one I mean?
Navigator's Compass. Yeah,
Navigator's Compass. Thank you. Since the Compass, Arboreal Grazer is a Navigator's Compass level soapbox card. Look, people love to play this card. They still play the card. And the thing that I think the disconnect happens, because all we're saying, right, is not that like the card doesn't affect the board. It does a little bit. And not that even having an extra land on the battlefield as early as turn 1 isn't powerful. It is. That is a powerful thing that lets you get out ahead. What we're saying is that that's not worth a card. That's the problem, is that it's not worth the magic card in your hand, because it's effectively a mulligan in many ways, or at least in many board states, to put an extra land from your hand onto the battlefield on turn 2, which again is powerful, but it's rarely game winning. In limited, it's very, very rare that you're able to like ramp out early and then just dominate the board from every step of the way from there, where your opponent never has a chance to get back in. Generally speaking, when that happens, it's because your opponent stumbled as well. And if that's the case, you probably would have won anyway without the Grazer. Again, I think people overestimate its impact on the board. They're like, well, it can block a small flyer. Okay, you're right. It can. That is a thing. It can hold down the board a little bit. It has just enough to be where you can kind of feel its presence, but it effectively never helps you win the game, right? It never actually does the thing that you want it to do. And that's because you're not ramping traditionally. You're not ramping a land card from your library and put it on the battlefield. Instead, you're taking it from your hand. And the difference between that is massive. You need to have that card in your hand, which you usually do. That's not really the problem. But we haven't even got into the part where you top deck this card late and you don't. It's miserable late game, absolutely horrendous, and it's not even that good early. It needs to be able to pay you off for some scenario if you're going to play a narrow card like this, and it really just doesn't get there on any of the metrics. So I'm sorry to all you Arboreal Grazer fans out there, but this card's bad. It really is. And I think that if you took it out of your deck would just be a lot better, even if you think it's great in there. All right. Should we put the Grazer to rest?
I think so. I think you put it out the pasture pretty effectively there.
I have an honorable mention for you.
Oh, yeah?
The Silent Submersible.
Oh, yeah. That card was... That card mostly tilted me because it was so close to being cool, and I hate when they spew good flavor on bad... Not just bad cards, because not just talking about power level. This just didn't feel like a submarine. It didn't have evasion. Right. It doesn't do anything. Like, I don't know. I still am kind of outraged by this card.
Yeah. And the funny part about it is that it was okay. I played it a few times, and it did things. I wouldn't call it good, but it wasn't terrible. It just... Yeah, but the flavor wise, it was like, this is your one shot at a sub.
Yeah, it's just like, I was disappointed to hear that first time that.
Mm-hmm. What card do you still have to read when it's cast?
Plain Wide Celebration, because it's like, okay, which modes are they choosing? What are they getting out of this? What could they have gotten out of this? It's a lot.
Yeah. Do you know what it does?
Okay. Make it 2/2, because it's all colors. Gain 4 life. Uh-huh. Return a permanent from your graveyard to your hand.
Yes.
And proliferate. Ha.
Yes, you did it. but you can only choose 4 of those. But you can choose the same one twice if you'd like, or even multiple times. Yeah, usually what you would see is they would get back like whatever the best thing was out of their yard and then like make 3 2/2s, unless the life gain was necessary for them to not die. That would be a pretty typical play pattern. For me, it was Fibblethip the Lost, mainly just because I could never remember what would cause it to go back to exile. Like I remembered pretty early that it wasn't him dying. I know he'd just go to the graveyard if he dies, but then it was like, if he gets targeted by something, it was like, is it a spell? Is it an effect? Is it anything? Is it my stuff? Is it their stuff? It turns out it's just a spell, just any spell. And not exiled, shuffled into the library, I mean, but yeah. And so that's when that happens. But, and then there's also the other thing too, about the drawing the 2 cards. Although that came up effectively never. All right, big question here. From a design and development aspect, how did the set fare? How were the mechanics? What were some of the wins and the losses for War of the Spark?
So I think that the Planeswalker theme is like a dangerous one, right? When we heard, wow, there's going to be 30 Planeswalkers or whatever it is, it sounded outrageous. It sounded like, how could you actually make this work and actually be good? It turns out it was actually pulled off really well. Planeswalkers are cool. They're intrinsically cool. They picked a lot of really good resonant ones that people like to see. And at the end of the day, the Planeswalkers ended up being a success. I think that they greatly improved the set and could have gone wrong. Like the uncommon Planeswalkers, for example, played out really well. I think that they ended up greatly increasing the gameplay of the set. It worked out. It didn't feel too wild to have all these Planeswalkers going on. And overall, I thought War of the Spark really came through with the stated theme was a good theme. There are some downsides, though. One of the biggest gripes I have is that the static abilities on these Planeswalkers led to some pretty unfun game moments. So this is stuff like you cast a draw 2 and there's a Narset in play. And you just don't draw those 2 cards. Or you cast a deal 3 on their creature and they have the Wanderer and it just doesn't do damage. And so that's the sort of thing that is pretty unfun when it happens and leads to those moments where you feel like, why am I even playing this game? Whereas a lot of, like, for example, Kasmina does it a little better. She says, well, you have to pay 2 more if you want to play a spell that targets one of your things, right? So there, you don't get to, like, it's not counter your spell unless you pay 2 more. If you cast Lightning Strike on their thing with Kasmina in play, it's just, Arena won't let you do it unless you pay 2 more. In paper, hopefully your opponent catches it and it's like, hey, you have to pay 2 more there. There's a very big difference between pre-decision taxes and post-decision taxes. And in this particular case, in this set, a lot of the things was post-decision. So you just ended up in these spots that I think were not very fun. Like, there's a lot to pay attention to, and the number of times someone ran into, or like the people have run into these things is just vast, right? More than any other set in history. So
by a lot. I remember visiting you guys, the Channel Fireball testing team in London. Paul and I came over to say hi, and that was something that even the pros, the Sam Parties and Matt Nasses, that were going like, yeah, it's real. Like, you got it. The statics add up and they can be difficult to remember. And I was like, wow, because that group of players isn't generally susceptible to that type of stuff, Yeah.
So,
and I remember forgetting a lot of them.
Yeah, I think that was a downside. I do think it would have been better if that wasn't part of it, or so. I don't think that was a positive. I do think there was a lot of complexity, and you can't have every set do that. But having it in one set every now and then is good. Like, I think it's good to have War of the Spark be ultra complicated, and then like M20 is significantly less complicated, right? And I think that that is a very big positive. So,
okay, you do. You think that's a good thing, like, because that was the criticism early, right? Was, what if this is too complicated? What if this was your first limited set?
Right, and I think that you do pay costs if it's always like that, because people don't have somewhere to get pointed to. They don't have they don't have a set they can ease their way into. And so if it was all War of the Sparks, that would be bad. But War of the Spark hit at a good level, and the cards are resonant and fun. So I think that matters too. Like basically, my gripe about Silent Submersible, it is real. Like I do actually think like, yeah, it's a lot less fun when the cards just aren't neat, when they don't feel like the thing they're supposed to feel like. Like I made a big deal about how Bag of Holding feels like a Bag of Holding from D&D. And I think that's awesome. I think that's the sort of thing that actually matters. So overall, War of the Spark gets a high grade. I think it probably just gets a flat A from me. I think that, yes, some of there is some downsides to, how complicated things were, the static abilities, but overall it was pulled off very well. And it was a theme that could have come out horribly. Could have been really bad.
Yeah, this felt like a risky set for sure. And they seem to have come out on the other side pretty well. What did the format teach you? How did it make you better at limited? What are the takeaways? For me, the biggest thing was the step back towards the efficient, cheap removal at common. Helped remind me about the fact that can really balance out bomb-driven stuff, and that's a really important dynamic to pay attention to when a new set comes out, like M20 just did, and you're trying to figure out, well, how are things going to play out? The effect that having cheap, efficient removal at common has, it warps the format in a major way, and I think in a good way. Because I like keeping bombs at bay. I like rewarding people for managing their removal in limited. Look, I understand that way back in the old days, things were really complicated, and I know some of the players really like that, but it didn't seem to suit the player base as a whole. But I like the idea of, we're playing limited. If I'm really good at choosing when and how to use my removal, then I get rewarded for that. That seems to me to be a core tenet for limited, and totally a fine thing to reward. And sets like this do that. I think sets like M20 does that as well. The Planeswalkers thing was interesting because I agree with you that by and large they pulled it off, but they did have some issues with it where there were times where certain Planeswalkers felt like they were just a bit much. They were hard to beat. If they played two Planeswalkers after like a decent creature and you didn't have the ability to pressure them right away, it did feel like they could snowball. They curbed that a bit by making the uncommon ones, down only, but it still felt like you were just too far behind. Adding that dynamic of having Planeswalkers all the time, I don't think I would want it. I don't know where the balance is. It's probably more than just like an occasional mythic rare Planeswalker shows up in limited. I actually did kind of like having a Planeswalker here and there that wasn't, game ending, but that was powerful, but I would just want to see a lot less of it. I hope that they find a good balance with that going forward, because I would kind of be bummed if they just went away from it. We saw one uncommon Planeswalker in M20, and I'd like to see something like that going forward, one or two here.
Yeah,
but not with the static abilities.
Yeah, I thought that the main thing for this is, it showed the range of Planeswalkers and how they could end up playing out, and it was pretty positive.
Mm-hmm. And then you also said RTFC for what it taught you.
Also that, yes.
Yeah, it's a tough lesson. All right, last one. What's your favorite card in the format?
Finale of Promise. This is the red finale, and the reason is it takes a lot of work for red finale to be good, but man, when it's good, it's just, when you do the work and it's good, it just feels so rewarding.
Yeah, that is a good one, and super fun. For me, it was Kasmina, Enigmatic Mentor. That card just hit all the right check boxes for me. Just felt super powerful when you played it, but also not dominant, right? We're not talking about like an A+ bomb that you play and you're like, well, now I just can't lose. This was incremental advantage. It wasn't straight up card advantage. It was like a 2/2 with some advantage and then another one, but it also had a very relevant static ability for limited, and all packaged up in an uncommon. It just kind of had it all. So
Kasmina was a lot of fun.
A lot of fun, powerful, but not broken, which is kind of a lot of my favorite cards fall into that category. All right, that's going to do it for episode 500. That is War of the Spark, setting the sun setting in the distance. Bye. Good set though, man. That one came out good. They are on a roll in R&D. I'll say that the whole Ravnica block, those 3 sets, all were hits. They hit on all of them. That is really tough to do. So I've been impressed, and if M20 holds up as well, I think we've got just a lot to look forward to from our friends in R&D, because I'll keep taking sets of this quality level over and over again. This is just fantastic, and it isn't always like that. So kudos. That's going to do it for this one. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR, and Luis is LSV. If you want to find anything related to the podcast, it's lrcast.com. And one thing we should mention, and I'll put this, I might even just put it on the website, but we can also put it on the notes, is that a listener and friend of the show named Mo did something really cool. Luis, I was telling you about this before the show started, but Mo sent us an email. Thank you. Yes. And Mo said, happy 500th and a gift. And he said he said he'd like to give something back to the show. So he made a spreadsheet that is an annotated, searchable, sortable, shareable sheet with every episode of the podcast, all 500 of them, that he's going to post on the subreddit. And I'll let him do that. And then a little later, I'll probably add it to the LRcast front page. But you can sort by set reviews, sunset shows, guests, sponsors, co-hosts, level up episodes, and date and episode number and stuff like that. And he's even got some notes in the notes tab, for the description of the show. So thank you, Mo. That was really cool. And what a great resource for our listeners who want to go back and listen to some of our older shows to get that. So, wow. Thank you, Mo. That was really, really nice of you, and we really appreciate it. So that's really cool. And again, I'll put that in. And then also, channelfireball.com. So again, if you want to get your M20, you can order up a box or whatever it is that you need to draft with your friends. The bundles and all that kind of stuff is available, and use code LSV. And if you do so, you can get 5% off. So that is fantastic. A nice little bonus for our listeners there. So make sure you take advantage of that. That's going to do it for this one. Thanks so much for listening to this show, and for all the other 500 episodes that we've done. We'll see you next week for episode 501.
So I had an interesting conversation recently with some folks who are older. And one of the things that really affects kind of our generation, Marshall, we're on the older end of the millennials, and then the generation after us as well. And I expect for successive younger generations, and not to say this can't happen to anyone older than us, definitely does, but it's a very big shift between like kind of where our parents were and where we are, which is we kind of feel in a lot of ways that you should always be doing something. You should always be doing some kind of work. And it's something that really, I think, impacts us more than we think. Because for people like us who have more unstructured jobs, like we don't have like office hours and you're done after those hours, it's very obvious, right? Like it's 9 p.m. You can decide to watch a TV show or go to bed, or you can put 3 more hours into editing the visual set review, or I could be writing an article or recording a video, right? We always have that choice. And that, at least for me, does make it sometimes hard to just completely relax.
Oh, me too. Totally. How do you fix it?
I don't know. And that's what I'm curious about. Like I know this affects a lot of people who are in our generation because there's things like, oh, you could, I work for Uber part-time. There's all these gig economy things where you can, if you want to spend your time, you can earn money outside of your normal work, right? Yeah. Or as your total work, whatever you want to do it. There's people who work a 9 to 5, then come home and drive from, do Uber delivery or any sort of something like that, a part-time job from 8 to midnight, and because they need the extra money. And what that does to you is it makes you always feel like you could be doing something useful, whether it's updating your resume, working on your side project, whatever it is, you could be doing something. And I think that can be pretty damaging. It's really hard to let go of that. And
yeah, I can't let go, man.
And look, like we're even lucky that we're doing things we like and are passionate about, right? Like, but it affects everyone. Not everyone, because some people do just have 9 to 5s and are done after that. But like, in this day and age, like how many people How many people get emails from their work outside of working hours? How many people are on Slack or some messaging service and, one of their coworkers messages them at 10 p.m. because they need something and you kind of feel compelled to respond. And I know Europe is really taking strides in making it illegal to contact your employees after work hours.
Really?
You can't. I don't know exactly where, but I know like France and I think some of the Scandinavian countries have more restrictive laws as to when you can communicate with your employees because they want, when you're not at work, for you to not be working and thinking about work. And unfortunately, I don't really have a solution or kind of a point here besides the fact that like, take it easy on yourself. Like try to just don't feel guilty if you're not always working. I know we both struggle with that and sometimes it's hard. You just have to, I think you just have to do what you can. And once you, and set good goals for yourself. So it's not that you're working 14 hours a day. And, some people have to, and we're privileged to not have to do that. And if you have to do that, then, I hope you're able to figure out solutions that work for you in your life. But man, it's just funny because this conversation was illuminating because I was talking to people who are much older. They're like, oh yeah, it wasn't ever like that. Like when you're done with work, you're just done with work. There's no.
My parents were so much better at relaxing.
Yeah, exactly. Part of it is like, look, it's awesome that there's all these opportunities where if someone wants to work remotely or work part-time, there's a lot of flexible places that'll pay you for your time. But the downside of that is you now know there's a lot of flexible places that'll pay you for your time. And you're like, I could see a movie or I could do 2 more hours of work and, make some more dollars. It's like,
yeah.
So try not to let it overwhelm you. Do what you can. And if you're struggling with it, we are too.